am so happy that we are starting the conversation about what to do, what to say, particularly for those families who are not comfortable if their child comes home and says that they are not heterosexual, or perhaps they're questioning their gender. This is the conversation today that we are going to have. So I want to welcome you. For those of you who are tuning in for the first time, this is the Parent Coach on Call show. And you're watching a series, the first part of a two-part series titled, "Oh No, Not My Child, LGBTQIA." I am Sharoya Ham. I'm a behavior change specialist and parent coach. I work with families who have children, teens particularly, who they're struggling to relate to, and also for teens who are having problems in school or just behaviorally, some behavior issues. I work with parents, I provide them with the skills they need and the scripts as well. So that's why I'm doing this show, because I know it's about what you do and what you say in response to your children that makes a difference in their lives. And so today I am teaming up with my special guest so that we can talk about this and how to help you parents understand what to say, what to do. She understands the emotional, social, and physical danger that await queer youth who feel like they are outcasts in their families. My guest. She works closely with organizations that serve LGBTQIA plus youth. She's a licensed psychologist, a substance use treatment expert, an executive consultant, and founder of Steady LLC, a clinical consultation, training, and development company. She is a leader providing corporate training on culturally responsive substance use, treatment, and belonging, justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion as it pertains to the workplace, wellness, and mental health. My special guest provides program development to improve culturally responsive practices in mental health and substance use treatment settings. She is joining us from California, USA. Welcome, Dr. Gabrielle Jones.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
You are welcome. I'm sorry, because we've been talking about this for over a year. I called you up and just said, hey, I don't know much about this topic, but I see a need. In my work, I'm seeing relationships between parent and children break down because kids are questioning their sexual and gender identity. And I just cannot imagine losing a child, my relationship with my children because of this issue. So I wanted to bring it up, and you said, I'm with you, I'll help you. And so I thank you so much. So Dr. Jones, before we get into the nitty gritty of our talk, I wanna know if there was an event that happened in your life where you just go, okay, I'm gonna jump into the arena and bring awareness to the LGBTQIA community.
Absolutely. I feel as though my journey to this place has been very evolved. So it started, the pivotal moment, I would say, is I had a friend in high school who was not necessarily like other people. He was eclectic, he was very sweet, very kind, but kept to himself and didn't necessarily feel like he fit in. And he actually died by suicide my junior year. He jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge and we found out, and that was a very traumatic situation for our school community, for me as a youth myself, and just for the pain that he felt like he couldn't express or heal from. And so I think that was a very critical and pivotal moment for me, because as an adolescent during that time, I didn't have anyone to really talk to about what was happening. And a friend of mine, he confided in me about his gender identity. And I don't know whether that was what caused him to die by suicide, but there were definitely aspects of his life that he struggled with and kept close, and didn't feel comfortable with as a result of the way that people responded to him unfavorably. So that was really a starting point that let me know this is something that really needs to be addressed at its core level. Society, our system, our communities need to heal and also need to change so that we don't keep losing lives, because it impacts the family, but it also in fact impacts the community around them and the teens themselves. So that would be, in a nutshell, the pivotal moment that let me know I need to do something, because I knew this person, and though I wasn't his parent, being a parent myself, I never want my child to feel like that is the only option, to be in so much pain that there's nothing left for them to do except for leave this earth.
Thank you so much for sharing this event. And I think over the course of time when we were talking, and I was trying to narrow it down, like, what is the intention of this? And it really narrowed down to keeping our children safe, whether it's physically, because someone is harming them, because they are the way they are, and people are attacking them. It could be in the house, it could be at school. And also, what about, safety that they feel in themselves, right? That so they won't self-harm.
Mhm.
And then the other thing is, because many parents would say, well, I would never hit my kid. I wouldn't push them out and make them homeless. But the words we say can cause that, can trigger a child to feel like there is no hope. And the only way for relief is suicide. So thank you for sharing that intimate event. My question now is, what happens when parents don't get the words quite right in responding to their children? What dangers do you see these kids facing? And what are you hearing queer youth say about their parents?
Sure. Well, before I get into what happens, I just want to validate the parents who are on this call and watching right now, because one, I commend you for being here and wanting to know more information, but I also understand very intimately how hard your child, the child that you've known and loved in their form for so long, is now saying that that's not who they are. So I want to validate that experience, because it is tremendously hard to hear that and to go through that. And naturally, our response to difficult situations may not meet the mark all the time. So I would encourage parents to give yourself some grace and recognize that it's okay if you maybe stumbled or if you didn't know. The other side of that, though, is it is extremely harmful to LGBTQIA plus youth when their parents do not respond in a favorable or even neutral manner. Because first of all, it is, as developmentally a teenager, going to your parent and sharing something so private with them is commendable for the teen, because oftentimes we don't have those types of relationships. The developmental stage that the teen is at is the desire for independence. So they have their core values from their parents and their family, but they want to be accepted and appreciated and seen as cool by their peer group. So going to their parent to tell them, hey, I feel like the body that I'm in is not consistent with how I present, is huge. So when you miss the mark and you don't respond to that in a way that is approving or even neutral, like I said, you eliminate that vulnerable space that your child is trying to create with you. You pull back an opportunity for connection. And you also are communicating to them that they're not enough. And that, I think, is probably the biggest thing that I hear my teens when I was working with teens directly, is that I'm not enough. Like, my parents don't love me. They don't understand me. They don't recognize who I am. And I'm trying to show myself to them, but they just don't get it. And so you immediately close off any line of communication that you have with your teen when you respond in a very drastic way or in a very negative manner.
So true. And I thank you so much for taking that opportunity to just applaud parents who are tuning in. Just shows that they're willing to learn something. Also, the point you made about neutral, you know, a lot of parents feel like, oh no, I don't, I don't agree. And somehow I have to be push this away and be oppositional. But I love the fact that, okay, let's not deal with the word approval, but how about hang on to neutral so that your child can have that space to share this intimacy with you? Because if you do this right, if you allow them to get into this level of intimacy with you, you all can work through this problem, or not even problem, but the challenge that you face to relate to each other. So thank you so much for bringing those words to our vocabulary.
Absolutely.
All right. This brings me right into my next question. I'm like, certain ethnic groups and religious groups, you know, they want to remain true to their beliefs. We know that it is not socially approved, it's accepted in these groups, particularly, like I said, the faith-based community or different ethnic groups. And so I want to know, how can parents be neutral, emotionally safe, have an emotionally safe place in their home and in their hearts for their children who identify as queer, while still honoring their values? Can you give us some practical ways these parents can create a safety preparedness plan? That's what I call it. Prepare in advance what you're going to say, what you're going to do in the event that your child or someone else's child, because we all have other children in our lives that look up to us. And I want to find out, how can parents develop this preparedness plan for not just their children, but any child in their life?
I really appreciate this question, because I think that often we think things are insurmountable. We can't attack them, we can't deal with them, and so we shut off. And it's really more simple than people want it to be. And the first thing I would say that it would be great for parents to recognize is, you can't necessarily prepare for everything that your child is going to tell you or do or experience. Just like your child coming to you saying they're pregnant, or coming to you saying that they have a drinking problem, or coming to you saying that they identify as LGBTQIA+, all of those experiences are extreme and a lot to handle. So the first thing I would tell parents to do is just take a beat, just take a breath. And you are at your teen, usually when they come to these realizations in their lives, they may have been holding on to it for a while, but when they come to you, generally they're pretty confident in how they feel. And like I said before, they're in a developmental space where they're trying to build independence. And that's a benefit for parents, because what parents can do is give them that autonomy by communicating with them in a way that is not necessarily parent to child, but just person to person. So what I mean by that is, if it's a lot for you, say it's a lot. Say, this is a lot for me. I wasn't prepared for it. So I need to take a minute, or can we come back to this in a few days? Give yourself time to process the information, to speak to your partner or to your faith community or to your friends, safe colleagues, peers, and tell them how you're really feeling. Talk to them. Share that information with them, not with your kid. Don't go telling your kid, oh my gosh, this is the worst thing I've ever heard. I don't know what I'm gonna do. Like, don't lose your mind. Keep your composure and just give yourself some space. Additionally, I would encourage parents to just remember that just because their child identifies in a different way than what they're used to, doesn't mean that that's no longer their child. And love is it overcomes all. And so just kind of recognizing that regardless of how you feel about the information, you still love your child. And I think this is a very unique talk that I'm doing because my expertise is in substance use, and a lot of my teens who I've worked with increase their substance use based off of the reaction that their parents have. So you got to weigh your, do you want your kid to turn to drugs and substances because of the way that you responded? Or do you want to remain a safe space for them so that they can work through and feel unconditional love? Because that's what it comes down to. And the third thing is recognize that as a parent, you're not going to agree with everything your kids do, period, point blank. You're just not going to agree. And that's okay. There is a healthy way to engage in disagreement. And you can share that, you can say to your teen, I don't agree with this. It's not in alignment with my faith and what I believe, but that doesn't change the fact that I love you unconditionally. Those are two separate things. Your agreement or disagreement and your love for your child don't have to go hand in hand. And I think a lot of times, if you just realize that and recognize I'm an individual, my child is their own individual, and they're coming into themselves, whatever that may look like, you have more of an opportunity to grow a connection and build. And then the last thing I would say is think about it like this. If your child comes to you, or a child comes to you and says, I identify as LGBTQIA+, what exactly does that change about your relationship with your child? Are you going to stop going out to dinner with them? Are you going to stop, spending time with them? Are you going to stop watching movies with them? Are you going to stop buying them clothes? Or are you going to stop going to their school events? None of that changes. It's their personal identity. It's their journey. And as a parent, it's our responsibility to allow them to grow and become their own independent individual. That's what we all want for our children, is for them to become independent individuals. And wherever your faith aligns, that doesn't stop because your child identifies in an LGBTQIA+ community. So those are some of the things I would say. It would also be great if someone is really struggling to connect with their faith-based community, if they have counseling services or just therapists in general. There are several therapist organizations that you can meet with, just talking to someone and coming up with a plan with regard to how you deal with some of the things that you're struggling with, because chances are it's your stuff and it's not your teen's stuff that you need to work on.
Wow. You are fulfilling what we teamed up to do today, really give some practical advice. And one of them, I want to pause before I go into this, just to say, whoever's watching, you're welcome to put your questions or comments in the comment box, and we'll address those. But I want to say that that point that you made about a pause, just being honest and saying, I need a moment, but also allowing them to just keep talking. Say, you may need to keep talking. You can keep talking, but I need a moment. And I care, but I just need a moment. And I'll come back to you, because sometimes they feel like you're running away, but assure them that you're coming back. You're coming back to talk. And what I love what you said, Dr. Jones, is go to someone else. Pour out your heart to someone else. And what also will happen in that conversation is generally, if that someone else knows your child, they remind you of who your child is. They remind you of their character. They remind you of their uniqueness. And so you can take that in and recognize, oh, I'm feeling this at the moment, but overall, this is just one aspect of my child's life. I've been living with this child all these years. And I know my child in the fullness. And basically they're saying, well, not quite. You don't know me in the fullness yet. So I'm trying to help you understand. You know, Dr. Jones, on your website, you have something called cultural humility. And it says the conscious act of acknowledging your limitations regarding awareness of someone else's culture. This can include, but is not limited to, their lifestyle, identity, or behaviors. And Dr. Jones, if I may, I want to quote you for years to come, because what I sat down and I wrote a version of this called parental humility. And it is the conscious act of acknowledging your limitations regarding awareness of your child's inner emotions, their experiences, and behavior. We just don't know everything about our child. And until we get to that level of humility, like something brings my child to this point in his or her life. And I'm going to sit here. I'm going to let them share with me. And I love this proverb that is also on your website. It says, examine what is said, not who is speaking. Almost close your ears when your child is speaking to you and hear what they're saying. So I love that. Do you want to add something else, Dr. Jones?
Yeah, I love that. And I appreciate you bringing that up. And one of the things that I would encourage people to remember is you want that relationship to last into adulthood and older adulthood, and cutting off the conversation too early eliminates that opportunity. So you lose a lot if you decide that this is where your stop is and where you're going to disown your child or ignore what they're saying or invalidate their experience. And I will tell you, the parents I've worked with really struggle when their child is able to leave the house and just doesn't talk to them anymore. And so I think this is a life-saving conversation in a lot of ways, because there's a disproportionate number of our teens dying by suicide, and even more so teens who identify as LGBTQIA+, and even more so teens that are of an ethnic or racial minority and LGBTQIA+. So this is life-saving work that we're trying to do. And I'm just grateful that you are on this journey and trying to get this information out there.
Well, Dr. Jones, it sounds like someone else is excited. They said, thank you for covering this heavy topic. The conversation was very well delivered. And I must agree, Dr. Jones has really nailed it in terms of what the intention of this talk is all about. So here's the last question for you, Dr. Jones. Really, I know that there are parents, as we mentioned, would be very upset. So what resources can they go to and find to really help them? And also want to say is, what in my research and talking to people in the LGBTQIA plus community, what I have found is many of them have said, well, they knew I was anyway.
Yeah.
So why is everybody tripping?
So yeah.
So okay, are there resources? But then I want to throw in this extra question. So like they said, people suspect, right? A parent may suspect, do they go in and have a conversation without their child coming out? And if so, where are the resources where parents can go and find relief in terms of there are other parents like me who are struggling in this, or someone to really go and figure out when's the best time to have a conversation, if or not to have one. If I suspect my child is struggling with their gender or sexual identity, please let us know.
Sure. Let me start by telling parents it is not all about you. I'm gonna just be frank. One of the things I'm very direct, it's not your fault. And a lot of parents, that's what the struggle is. What did I do wrong? What mistake did I make as a parent to make you like this? That's not the case. That's not how it works. So I think educating yourself first and foremost on the LGBTQ identity and gender affirming care and what that means is really valuable, because it's not your fault and it's okay. It's going to be okay. Two things, if nothing else, it's not your fault. It's going to be okay. As far as resources are concerned, PFLAG is a really helpful resource specifically for families. It stands for Parents and Families and Friends of Lesbian and Gay Individuals. But they have several resources on how to talk to your teen, what it means, as well as specific spiritual resources that would be helpful if you're looking for a spiritual lens. And GLAAD, the Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation, is a very valuable resource for information gathering. So those are the two that I would say, are really helpful and have a lot of good information. There are several other resources that I can share after this session that are specific to youth and individuals of color. And that might be helpful for your teen if they're looking for someone to talk to about this. And also, I would encourage parents, again, to seek their own individual therapy just to process what they're experiencing. Because one of the things that happens in this stage of an adolescent's life is they're taking in how you respond to difficult information. And that is then how they will respond to difficult information as they get older. So you're modeling behavior in the moment when you respond and how you respond. So you're molding their emotional intelligence, their emotional capacity by the way in which you respond. So doing these things, making these clear statements that you need time, going to friends and family members and relatives to get support, and just making space for your teen is going to then translate to the way that they respond to their kids one day. So I would encourage people to just think about it like that. Coaching, coming to embrace behavior change and getting some coaching is definitely valuable. But seek out the tools overall. They're out there, they're accessible, and there are places where you won't be judged if you feel negatively about the way that your child is living their life or what's happening. And you shouldn't be judged, honestly, because you're entitled to your feelings just as much as your teen is entitled to their feelings. And if you suspect, or if you've always known and you're just kind of pretending like it's not a thing, then maybe have a conversation with your teen and ask them. Just ask them. Not in a judgmental way or not in a passive aggressive way, like, I hope you're not doing blah, 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 fill in the blank, but just, hey, can we have a chat? I want to know more. I'm just curious, because your teen is the expert on their experience in their life. So if you give them the space to educate you, which that parent humility comes into play, then you're building that emotional connection with them.
Excellent, Dr. Jones. I can't even tell you how happy my heart is today because I know this is going to free up so many parents. Like, it's not my fault. And I can have negative feelings. I can have feelings just like my child. And then you just mentioned uh, memory lapse here. It'll come back to me. But oh, I think when you said oh, you said they are the experts of their lives. And I want to just say to parents, if you go in like that, sweetheart, you are the expert of your life. And so I'm coming to ask you to get to know you better.
Yeah.
This is the basis of the question I'm about to ask you, so that you can honor them as the expert of their life. And like, you don't know, you suspect, you think, but a lot of times I know even as an adult, people will say, oh, I think he's gay. Like, how do we know?
Mhm.
You know, and so I just want to say, parents, to if you lead with something that honors your kid and they're knowing of themselves, you might get somewhere, um, you know, with intimacy, with gentleness.
Mm.
And then you mentioned about parents getting support. I am very big on this. Parents, if you decide that you want to do therapy and you want to do therapy with the kids or have the kids do therapy, I just do not recommend that. I recommend you start with therapy or coaching and then deal with your therapist, your coach, and see if it's time
Yeah.
to have your child go. Because what happens immediately is like, it's your problem,
Yeah.
you know, and so I do not recommend that. And thank you so much, Dr. Jones, for saying that coaching also can be of help to parents. So before you go, I want to let people know how they can get in touch with you, because I mean, they need to invite you to speak at different occasions. I know your work is around substance use, but I also know that you do provide limited counseling sessions. And would
Mhm.
you be open to these parents reaching out to you for counseling?
Absolutely. So I'm licensed only in California. So unfortunately, if
Okay.
there are parents in other states, I can't provide therapy services to them. I can maybe direct them if I have colleagues in different areas. For those parents who are in California and are looking for a resource, more than welcome to reach out to me.
Awesome. And I'm going to post her, Dr. Jones's website, Twitter handle, all in the comment section. And be sure to click on that link that says parenting LGBTQIA plus children. There you'll receive through email a list of the resources that she mentioned here. And I'll also provide some scripts and resources as well. And I want to say this is part one. Part two is coming up on August 18th with Dr. Colton Brown, and Dr. Jones put me in contact with him. And what is going to be the treat on that day is that Colton has agreed to share with us what he wished his parents would have said. And he's going to do that in a way of walking his parents through being a young kid and what he wished they would have known and done across the span of his life. I am just so excited because Dr. Jones basically told me, reach out to Colton. And it has just been a collaboration between the three of us over the course of a year. Because why? I needed to get myself together in a place to know that this is an area that I'm going to address. Because as I mentioned, my primary work is around relationships between parent and child that is just due to average teenage issues, and also with children who are struggling with educational behavioral challenges. But I'm so happy I felt the calling of the Lord, I just believe, to come and address this issue. And so thank you so much for being in this space along with me, Dr. Jones.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. Thank you for the invite.
All right, and everybody, thank you for tuning in. If this has been beneficial to you all, I almost beg you, yes, I'm begging, to share this video because we know so many parents can get this load off their shoulders if they just watch this video and were able to figure out the next step in their lives. All right, thanks again. Bye, everyone.